Hey Gearheads, Jared here, bringing you another update on the stubby build that I'm doing. This time focusing on the rear suspension and hopefully getting that buttoned up today so I can move on to the front. I have started assembling the Dana 44 front axle, but it's time to get the rear all buttoned up and everything. So for those of you following along, here's what I've done so far. We've kind of got this rear cage in there. I'll show it better once I flip the camera around and everything, but I've got that rear cage in there. So I've got the mounts for the fuel cell. So there's tube underneath as well as flat plate on top that's going to hold that cell in place and put pressure on it. And there's a spare tire mount. Everything's removable for the spare tire so I can get the fuel cell in and out if needed. I'll show that to you as well. And I have the shock hoops fabbed up, but I basically need to figure out where those shocks are going to mount exactly. So I have some the top mounts are not done, and neither are the mounts on the axle itself. So that's what I'm going to be working on to figure out exact placement and make sure everything cycles the way it's supposed to, basically. And yeah, so that's what I'm working on for now. Let me show you what I've done with this rear axle. All right, so for the rear of the truck, we have basically the spare tire is going to fit on here on these tubes that go across. And then these little triangles are the tie down points. So there's two up at the front there for the Y strap that's going to go over the spare tire. That with the tube right there will kind of seat and position the spare. And then down in here, we have the fuel cell mount. It's out of it right now as I was welding everything. But I do have the little joints right there that basically will allow me to remove the rear bumper. A bunch of things are tied into the rear bumper back here. Let me get underneath. So this whole support will be removable if needed in the rear by unbolting these bolts up here and these guys. And I think there's there's two more bolts that you can't see that are up top. And I can remove the rear bumper and tow hitch. But all that should be super solid in there. There's a bunch of tube and everything holding that in place. And as you can see, it's messy under here, but the fuel cell mount doesn't go lower than the hangers for the leaf springs. So those are my low point. So unless there's, a big rock or something in the middle, the fuel cell should be pretty protected in here from anything. And then it'll hit this tube before it hits the actual fuel cell as well. And the way I have it mounted, if this needs to flex or move a little bit, there is a little wiggle room. So the fuel cell is actually held in place by the top, by the pinch bolts on that fuel cell, and not just fully resting in here and relying on this to be held in place. This is more of reinforcement / supporting the bottom of the fuel cell. And then also underneath here, I have pulled apart the leaf spring packs, basically. And I am going to be flexing out the rear of the suspension on here. So what I've been doing for right now is I basically measured the leaves that I pulled out of the pack, and then I made some wooden blocks with holes for the pins on the bottom of the leaf spring here, and then just a screw to locate it, in which hole I want on this. So basically I'll be going middle hole, and that lines up with the pin that's underneath here. So like you can see on that side. So that way when I'm cycling this rear suspension, it's going to account for the fact that I should have a leaf pack in here when I'm figuring that out. So basically I'll figure full compression, and that's where I'm going to put my bump stops up here on the frame rail, and then full droop. And that's going to allow me to locate the rear shock using these nice shock mounts from Rough Stuff, which are actually 10 degrees canted. Let me see, I don't know if this is the right one or not. Yeah, it is. But 10 degrees canted in to allow for that shock to come slightly at an angle as needed. And it's gonna come up here and tie into this tube. So where it ties in is what I need to figure out, basically, and what exact height. So these shock tubes are measured to the approximate height that the shock is going to be at. So you can tell it's just below the truck line there for the bed line, because I didn't want them to be visible, because I want this to keep a fairly stock appearance if you're to look at it from the side. But they match up with the height matches with the travel of the shock and the overall length of the shock. But I still have a little wiggle room on where to mount these based off of the shock mounts that I'll be using. So whether it's going to be, you know, I could go a few inches either direction with that. So that's what I need to figure out, is when I fully compress that shock, where does this shock mount need to be, and make sure nothing is binding up, because it's basically going to be traveling in between the bedside here and the frame rail. And they're quite big, 3-inch Fox bypass shocks, so need to make sure that they have plenty of room to flex. So I have the limit straps in place, and I have the lower shock mounts in place on both sides to where I think they will be, yeah, in order to allow flex. And these ones are actually 10-degree offset mounts from Rough Stuff that are on the axle right now. I've got my shock wrapped to try to help protect it while I'm doing everything. And I have these 2 top shock hoops fabbed up. So I have this double shear mount in here that is also from Rough Stuff. And right now I don't have an angled one, so I have this one canted, but it fits well. So this is already radiused. I can fill that in if needed, but I don't plan to. I just plan on welding the 2 sides here. But basically what I'm going to do is cycle the suspension, make sure that we clear on both sides of the shock when going through the full suspension travel, and that nothing is binding on both sides. So I'm going to get the passenger side shock all in place and everything, and then I can start cycling the suspension. Exciting. So last week I was hoping to get the rear end finished up, but that ended up not happening. So today is the day. I've just been really busy with life outside of this, so unfortunately just haven't had much time to devote to it. But hopefully that's coming up here pretty soon. So let me take you through what I'm doing right now and kind of what the game plan is. But yeah, let's dive into it in this rear suspension. All right, so here's the driver's side right now. So I'm basically jacking up this side to make sure everything clears and to set my bump stop height. So what I'm gonna do is basically continue, I'm gonna jack up the rear of the truck even more and then see if I can get the passenger side to droop all the way down to make sure we're clear. But this should be stuffing fully in here, which is nice. So when I found this truck in the field, somebody had already cut these fenders on, this kind of mystery step side bed that was on here. So I did not do that, but it did make a nice arch for 37s, even though that was definitely not what was on here at the time. They're much smaller, like 33s, I think. And then the other note is right now my axle block is centered on there, but I do have holes front and rear, so I can fine tune this a little bit. And then I actually have some offset blocks too, if needed. So if I have to adjust it even more. But I think just moving it like 3/4 of an inch back should center everything for me. So you can just tell on this side, it's a real tight gap. So it is clearing right now. This is basically where I'm gonna set my bump stop. And then back here, there's a larger gap. So, you know, I'm looking at maybe 3/4 of an inch, shifting it back a little bit to even a 1/2 inch. And that should align everything really well. And then I can get my bump stop set. So under here, I've got 3 floor jacks I've been working with and basically jacking up the rear of the truck here and the suspension to make sure everything clears. So I've got my rear shock in there. I've got where the shock kind of fits into the bed. So I'm gonna trim a little bit more, but it is clearing technically. And then I don't have a lot of droop going on the passenger side right now. So I need to get the truck jacked up even more and let that passenger side droop. And then I'm gonna, you know, run this one up even higher and make sure we're all good there. So yeah, I'm gonna do that real quick and then let's go through it and I can set my bump stops. So right there on the frame, I'm gonna set my bump stop mounts. And if I go over here, here's an example of one of the mounts that are gonna go, you know, basically it's just a triangulated piece here that's gonna go on the frame and just right on the frame, but I wanna set the height properly on where that's gonna fit. So yeah, let me keep working on the truck and I'll update you as we go. All right, boys and girls. So don't do this at home. This is really stupid and it's probably gonna fall. Like that 4x4 is actually kicking out already. But I'm gonna try to measure this real quick and not get under the truck for sure. But I am trying to articulate the rear suspension given my tools at hand. I don't have a forklift at this location or anything. But yeah, so I'm stuffing the rear tire, and what I just said about moving the axle back actually isn't going to work. So as it's articulating, it is swinging back more, as you would expect, based off how leaf spring travels. So I just wasn't articulating it enough before, so it looked like it needed to move back, but it really is pretty good in here. So I would say this would be the bottom of my bump stop, because the tire will still move, but I'm real close in there. So this is where I'm going to take my measurement and get the bump stop set to that location. But on the good side, all my clearances, oh man, this is going to fall for sure. I'm going to address that real quick, but all my clearances and everything are rock solid right now. So let me fix this jack stand real quick before it kicks out and murders me, and then I'll come update you guys some more. All right, everyone. So today's project is designing and building a off-road jack for this truck. So basically my whole goal of this has been packaging things as much as possible for what I want on the truck, in terms of like tools, spare parts, storage, that sort of thing. So one of those things is, of course, an off-road jack. And then I'll have impact gun, I'll have a cooler and other stuff like that on the truck as well. So today I'm doing the jack, so that way I can wrap up the tube work in the back of the truck, get it painted, and then start assembling everything finally, so that way I know exactly what my ride height's going to be, set that, and then I can start designing the front suspension of the truck. I'm just trying to get, ideally I do want to just jump to the front suspension, of course, because that's the fun stuff, but I don't want to basically keep putting and taking stuff, putting it on, taking it apart. So I don't want to like do the shocks and take it off to paint it again and all that. So let me show you what I'm doing right now, and we'll go from there. All right, so on the back of the truck, we basically have this area where the spare tire is going to go, and it does come off and take some of the space. So what I'm going to do is, here in my space that I have to play with, is I'm going to be designing, or I have designed, I guess, and going to be prototyping a jack that's going to go there. I had originally planned on, this is super messy, but originally planned on using this this jack mount for the Harbor Freight Badlands jack that you see over there. But unfortunately, I just haven't found a spot to package it, and unless I was sacrificing other things that I want to have with me. So that's just not going to happen right now. Just didn't fit on the truck. Yeah, so in front of the spare tire is a cooler area, and then I have the mounts. I did some aluminum sheet metal, and you can see the little tabs there for the quick turn fasteners that'll be going in. And then in this spot up here is going to be a Milwaukee toolbox as well. And yeah, basically it's going to sit against these guys and then be strapped down into place there. So yeah, jack is going to live right there, and it's over in the background. I'll show you what I've done. All right, on my extremely messy tool bench here is my scissor jack. So what I've done for this, I'm basically just doing some rapid prototyping to come up with something that I think will work. So it's not super clean, but I just want to build something and test it, and I can always make a nicer version of it. So I basically built a platform that the scissor jack is going to sit on. So, and then this is a 9,000 pound scissor jack that goes up almost 26 inches, I think about 25 inches. So more than enough for the travel I have. And I also wanted something that can articulate a little bit off-road, because you don't always have a perfect surface for this jack to be sitting on. So, this should be like a mount to prevent it from sinking down. So that's the reason it's concave, and it makes like a little pocket for any dirt or anything, or on rocks it'll kind of hopefully self-locate as needed, instead of just a little base that these normally come with. But if it is off camber a little bit, I wanted to build some articulation into this as well. So, when that jack is crooked, instead of wanting to kick out, it can kind of self-correct and hold things up a little bit.
So I'm going to test that. I did something similar on my race Can-Am as well with the jack that I kept on there, and it worked out really, really well, actually. So yeah, this is just a new design. Like I said, just kind of some rapid prototyping. I'm going to put it under the truck, under the axle, and try going straight up and getting the whole axle in one jump, and then going side to side and making sure that it articulates as needed and also stays under the truck and stays put. And this guy does have a 3/4 inch nut on it as well, so that makes it really nice just to go up and down. I will be keeping a 1/2 inch impact drive, but it actually works unloaded pretty well with a 3/8. So of course it just goes up and down. It'll lock into position down, and it'll go up just fine. So with the 1/2 inch, I know this style works loaded and should be fine with that one. So yeah, this is kind of what I've come up with so far. It's just going to be held in with some 1/2 inch bolts, basically. And let me pull out the back one. Just going to want to drop. And literally I just used tabs I already had. I've got like a whole stockpile of these tabs, but basically just locked everything in. Try to make some supports for it for strength, but also to limit the articulation, because I didn't want it, you know, fully wanting to fold over. So, you know, you get a couple degrees in here or so just to allow a little unstable ground, but nothing fancy. Should be cool, and we're gonna try it out. Hopefully it works, and if it doesn't, just a waste of time, but it is what it is. All right, time to work on the mounts as well. So basically for the mounts, I'm gonna have two coming off the chassis in the back, and then from there, I still have to design it. So something that this base is gonna fit into. Basically, I'm gonna have it slot in to a mount so it's captured on one side with like a 45-degree plate, because these are 45-degree angles. And then I have a quick release pin that I'm gonna make a little mount that comes off it, and it's gonna locate with that pin. So in order to pull the jack out, you just pull one pin and you're all good. There we go.